to the holiday report. I know it's been a while since we last touched base, about a month, but a lot of things have been going on. And in today's episode, we will cover what it is like to travel in the People's Republic of China. But first, we're going to need a bit of context, why I was there, what I was doing there, and what it is like to fly in the land of the panda. So my journey itself began a few thousand kilometers away in Bali in Indonesia, where I've spent 5 days in the district of Legayan, so a part of the Bali island where I met with some friends and enjoyed the sunshine. And it was kind of nice, so I experienced Emirates. I will speak about it probably in a later episode. I feel like a lot of people speak about Emirates. And I then went for a weekend in Malaysia, where I discovered AirAsia, which is the biggest low-cost airline group in the region. And again, this will be another episode. And after 3 days in Kuala Lumpur, I decided, a bit last minute, to go to China. China is, of course, one of the most powerful countries in the world. And up until 2025, French citizens, together with other countries, have access to the country visa-free. So I thought, why not? And I killed 2 birds with 1 stone, discovering one of the countries with arguably one of the most interesting histories, but also some of their airlines, which are a little bit unknown, shall we say. So in this episode, we will cover 2 airlines, really. Shenzhen Airlines, which is a subsidiary of Air China, so the service is similar to the mainland carrier, as well as Sichuan Airlines, which is the famous A350 airline, which has aircraft painted in a panda scheme. So let's get to it. So my first encounter with a Chinese airline began on Wednesday, the 26th of June 2024, so just over a month ago actually now, departing Kuala Lumpur at a very ungodly 7 a.m. Now, of course, Chinese airlines, even abroad, do apply Chinese aviation rules, which stipulate that you have to be at the airport around 3 hours before your flight. Now, I was a bit naughty in that I got there 1 hour and 20 minutes before, which made it, 4:40 a.m. For flight ZH0332, bringing us from Kuala Lumpur to Shenzhen. The airline, which I haven't mentioned yet, was Shenzhen Airlines. Now, Shenzhen Airlines is a subsidiary of Air China, which truly focuses its operations around the city with the same name, that being Shenzhen, which is just south of Hong Kong. Now, the flight time on this day was 4 hours and 40 minutes, if I remember correctly, and that was on board an Airbus A320. So that made it the longest flight I've ever had on an A320. I wasn't quite sure what to expect because there weren't really any reviews on the airline that I could find available online. Of course, Air China is something you can find kind of easily. So I expected something similar, but I was booked in premium economy, which is probably not a cabin class we're that familiar with in Europe on narrow-body planes. So yeah, I checked in having absolutely no idea what was awaiting next. So of course, being at the airport so early in Kuala Lumpur meant that there wasn't much to do. Once you passed immigration, which is right next to the check-in counter as you go down, and security actually was at the gate when you were boarding, so it made the process after immigration kind of straightforward. you could still carry your bottle of water or buy anything, inside, and really have to throw it away at the last minute. I find it to be actually kind of intelligent, because it doesn't force you to buy stuff basically airside. I'm aware this is probably not something we can do in Europe, but definitely something a bit different. So yeah, once you passed immigration at 4 a.m., well, by the time I made it, it was probably more like 5:30. There wasn't much to do really. So the next hour and a half was spent walking around, having a bit of coffee and speaking with friends before making it to China. Now, that 1 hour, 30 minutes went by pretty quickly. I mean, unlike in Japan with All Nippon and Japan Airlines, you don't have access to the lounge. So, yeah, it's really bare bones before the flight. Once on board, though, so of course we boarded it straight on time, we were greeted with some kind of, I don't know which fabric it was, but a very plushy kind of blanket, a small pillow, and some slippers. Now, I've flown the Q Suite, which is something else. It's one of the best business classes in the world, lie flat and everything. I didn't have slippers. But here in Premium Economy in Shenzhen Airlines on the A320, you had slippers. The flight being 4 hours and 30 minutes, I expected to have some kind of IFE in the armrest or something. That wasn't the case. There was a centralized IFE with movie in Chinese, but of course I don't speak Mandarin. Sorry, I should have said Mandarin. So, yeah, the 4 hours were spent looking out the window. So nothing much happened, really, until the first half of the flight. We had a breathtaking sunrise over, the bay sort of area next to Kuala Lumpur. That was kind of nice. It was a bit challenging to record, actually, anything because the windows were horribly scratched, the aircraft itself being just close to 20 years old. So, yeah, kind of expected with all the use. About an hour into the flight, service began. And it was kind of mysterious. The cabin crew that were responsible for Premium Economy didn't really speak English at all that well, which was fine. We managed to communicate using some kind of offline translator she had and some of the basic words. So I made it to kind of understand what was offered. So there was some liquid yogurt, strawberry liquid yogurt, which turns out liquid yogurt is something very, very popular on Chinese airlines. You just slurp it, it's really nice. Some kind of bread bun, which is kind of tasty. A piece of biscuit, a piece of watermelon, and a piece of melon as a kind of side dish. Some crackers, and I can't remember the other side, the other option really, but I went for a beef. No, actually, I can't exactly remember what it was. I believe it was beef. It was labeled Chinese fried rice. And it was interesting. So the meat itself was kind of very flavorful. The rice was amazing. And then there was some side dish of carrots, and I'm not too sure what the other vegetables were. And of course, on the podcast, it's difficult to describe, but it was kind of green vegetables similar to kale, but not kale. And it was incredibly tasty. And after that, obviously, the other 2.5 or so hours, we didn't have much service. So we were offered coffee every now and then, tea every now and then, Coca-Cola before approaching Shenzhen. Now, what do I make of Shenzhen Airlines? Now, of course, not speaking Mandarin made it complicated to communicate with the crew. But despite not being able to communicate fluently, I managed to get my order through. It was very interesting. It was very tasty, very unusual for me as a European to be served any kind of hot meal on a kind of regional flight. That's something which we're just not used to. It's only really if you fly long haul. So on that side, it was long haul level quality of food with a more comfortable seat because Premier Economy comes with a bit more leg room. And yeah, good food, kind crew. I mean, they were good, they were professional, but you couldn't really understand much of what they were saying. Again, expected with the language barrier, but honestly, for an airline, I had no idea what it was like. Gave me a good first impression. So I was transiting in Shenzhen. My final destination was Beijing. And I was supposed to fly Shenzhen Airlines on the A330. That was the whole point of the trip. But something happened which a lot of people warned me about. Stay tuned and I'll tell you a bit more. So here's a thing a lot of people know about, but also don't know about if they don't travel to China, is that contrary to most other countries in the world that has a civil aviation, it's not directed, like air traffic control is not managed by civilian ATC, but more by military ATC. So anytime there's any kind of drills going on or bad weather systems or stuff like that, you can end up having issues of very long waiting times. And this happened to me. So my initial flight was supposed to be on the Shenzhen Airlines A330. That was delayed by about 3 hours. So I was bumped onto, another flight, which was on Air China in Premium Economy in the Dreamliner. And that was supposed to leave 2 hours after I arrived. Now, little did I know that was also delayed by about 3 hours. So effectively, the flight to Beijing, which I was initially booked on, left before my replacement flight. But hey, I got to try another obscure airline-ish. It's more known than Shenzhen Airlines, but an obscure version of the service on an aircraft which isn't seen much in Europe. So yeah, about 3 hours, 4 hours after I checked in and everything, we boarded. And yeah, so we boarded through the first door of the aircraft, door 1, and we made it through business class and then economy class, premium economy class kind of stuff. So there isn't much of a difference between economy and premium economy. It's the same seat effectively, except if you're in PE in the Dreamliner in China, you have a leg rest, which you don't have in the back, I don't think. And you have these slippers, which are interesting. Again, the flight was kind of uneventful. It was easier to communicate with the Air China crew, maybe because they're exposed to more international lines, maybe because they have a better English training, I don't know. But it was easier to speak with them. They were better at translating. There were still some issues of translation. So obviously, again, this flight was about 2 hours and 30 minutes. So midway, about an hour and 15 minutes-ish into the flight, we were served the Air China meal. That was after the first and second round of drinks, because they do one round going down the cabin, one round going back up, and then the food. The food was described as a beef burger or a beef Chinese burger. It did not taste like beef, it was more like pork, and it wasn't a burger, it was a bao. Luckily, I was not allergic to pork, nor did I really care. It was really tasty. With that, again, this infamous yogurt and a banana. So kind of underwhelming when compared to the service on the slightly longer flight from Kuala Lumpur to Shenzhen, but albeit still very friendly crews. So yeah, it was kind of interesting, I guess. So we didn't get to speak much about the Sichuan Airlines. I plan on going more into detail on that next time, because we are getting near the 15-minute mark and I don't want to be too long. So what is my take on the Air China group and the kind of service you can expect? So of course I haven't flown them enough really in that segment to have a perfect judgment. But if you are thinking about flying with Air China, especially looking at their cheap fares to places like Australia, By all means, go for it. I mean, it's not going to be Emirates level. It's not going to be Qatar Airways level, Air France level. But it's still a very decent airline to try in that part of the world. Most of the staff speak English. The food isn't too spicy or too weird as it can sometimes be in these parts of the world. So, your stomach won't take a hit or anything. It is kind of adapted to the Western palate. A good introduction to Chinese food, a good introduction to Chinese culture. References to pandas absolutely everywhere, even if you're not flying on Sichuan Airlines. So yeah, give it a try, but be respectful of the fact that they may not be that comfortable with English, and be open. Traveling to China is very interesting, is very cultural, if you remain open about the persons you will interact with. So between now and next time, enjoy your flights and have a good time. I'll see you soon.